Thank you. All right, so let me this set up here. Everyone seeing that okay? I have found that, for me at least, with this PowerPoint, I have divided the IGAN into 3 sections for the 3 different PowerPoints, so it will be easier if I need to email it to anybody to not go over the limit. So we're starting another round of 3. I hope that
Haji, could you please change the display settings into mirroring? It shows black bars.
all right, dear friends, so I hope that over the next 3 weeks, tonight included, we will finish going through the full text of the Kitab-i-Iqan. Now, I'm very excited about some of the sections that are coming up over the next 3 sessions, including tonight's, and especially tonight in many ways, because we're going to be going through.
No, good
evening. So anyway, because a number of the passages that we're going to talk about tonight are also in Gleanings, and some of them are passages that are quite familiar, that the Guardian and other, the House of Justice refer to frequently, particularly when Baha'u'lláh gets into what we must do to improve our spiritual growth. So we will get into that. Now, what I would like to propose is, if we have 2 more sessions on the IGAN after tonight, to do one more session at the very end of this month. It would be the 31st, which is also Easter, where we go over what Shoghi Effendi said about the IGAN and the topics he divides it into, to sort of get a final big overview of the IGAN once we've had an opportunity to look at the entire book. So if you would like to do that, I'm very happy to do that. I see a few heads nodding yes, but if there's an interest in that, then I would be very, very happy to have that last session. All right. So this, as you see, is again in green font with some other colors mixed in just to give us some emphasis. So this again is from Gleanings. And we're going back to something he talked about in the section we covered last week, which is the 2 stations of the manifestation. You will remember that Baha'u'lláh made that wonderful statement that we talked about it last week about why he repeats things. He says, we have variously and repeatedly set forth the meaning of everything, theme, that perchance every soul, whether high or low, may obtain according to his measure and capacity, his share and portion thereof. Should he be unable to comprehend a certain argument, he may, thus, by referring unto another, attain his purpose. So Baha'u'lláh is deliberately repeating many of the same themes that we've already encountered, with the hope that if you didn't understand it said one way, perhaps you'll understand it another way. This is why the book is not linear. He sort of jumps back and forth, back and forth. So last week he talked about the 2 stations of each of the messengers of God, one of which is the station of essential unity, which he's already explained. And this also is, as he explained earlier, that station where all of the messengers of God talk about certain major themes, such as prayer, the importance of sacrifice, and trying to attain spiritual growth. But then they also have particular missions. And so the other is the station of distinction. And this is their worldly distinction from other messengers of God that pertains to the world of creation and its limitations. Each manifestation of God hath a distinct personality, a definitely prescribed mission, a predestined revelation, and specially designated limitations. You know, Jesus said, there are many things I could tell you, but you cannot bear them now. But when he who is the Spirit of truth comes, he will make all things plain. So Jesus knew that he wasn't supposed to go beyond a certain point in talking to us. Baha'u'lláh has many places where he says, there are things I could tell you, but I'm not going to because you're not ready for them. Each one of them is known by a different name, is characterized by a special attribute, fulfills a definite mission, and is entrusted with a particular revelation. It is because of this difference in their station and mission that the words and utterances flowing from these well springs of divine knowledge appear to diverge and differ. Otherwise, in the eyes of them that are initiated into the mysteries of divine wisdom, all their utterances are in reality but the expressions of one truth. As most of the people have failed to appreciate those stations, they therefore feel perplexed and dismayed at the varying utterances pronounced by the manifestations that are essentially one and the same. It was interesting, last night in our community, we were talking about the symbolism of the mirror. Well, if you think about it, if Jesus had tried to use the mirror as a symbol, the average person had no access to a mirror. The mirrors of his day weren't clear mirrors. They were just highly polished metal. The mirror of the 19th century was a very different thing. So Baha'u'lláh could use that in a way that Jesus didn't have accessible. So he says, it hath ever been evident that all these divergences of utterance are attributable to differences of station. Thus, it is that the accents of God himself have been heard uttered by these manifestations of divine being, even though they seem to be different. Viewed in the light of their second station, the station of distinction, differentiation, temporal limitations, characteristics, and standards, they manifest absolute servitude, utter destitution, and complete self-effacement. Even as he saith, I am the servant of God, I am but a man like you. So in one sense, they are servants, even as they manifest God. They are doing what God wills them to do, and only what he wills them to do. So Jesus was given 3 years to have his ministry. The Bab was given 6 years. Baha'u'lláh was given 30 some years, depending on what point you start counting. They come to different times. They have different physical and cultural characteristics. And these have been willed by God. So they are servants of God in the sense that these limitations have been placed upon them by God himself. And here's a concept that I think Baha'is are more likely to understand than other people. This seeming contradiction. Were any of the all-embracing manifestations of God to declare, I am God, he verily speaketh the truth, and no doubt attacheth thereto. For it hath been repeatedly demonstrated that through their revelation, their attributes and names, the revelation of God, his name and his attributes are made manifest in the world. And were any of them to voice the utterance, I am the messenger of God, he also speaketh the truth, the indubitable truth. So they are all messengers of that ideal king. They are all but one person, one soul, one spirit, one being, one revelation. They are all the manifestations of the beginning and the end, the first and the last, the seen and the hidden, or as the New Testament says, the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. This is not new. This is something he's already said many times previously, but clearly he's decided to repeat these very important concepts. And were they to say, we are the servants of God? This is also a manifest and indisputable fact, for they have been made manifest in the uttermost state of servitude, a servitude the like of which no man can possibly attain. Now, we know Abdu'l-Bahá says the highest station is that of servitude. They are so subservient completely to God and his will that we can't even understand that level of servitude. There's that wonderful prayer of the Bab, I beg thee, oh my God, to forgive me for every mention but the mention of thee, every praise but the praise of thee, every delight but delight in thy nearness. The manifestations are able to be constantly aware of God and constantly doing his will in every breath they take. We have to think about what we're going to eat for dinner. We forget about God in that moment. So he says this is a servitude the like of which no man can possibly attain. Thus, in moments in which these essences of being were deeply immersed beneath the oceans of ancient and everlasting holiness, or when they soared to the loftiest summits of divine mysteries, they claimed their utterance to be the voice of divinity, the call of God himself. They are completely immersed in God and his will. And so everything they say and do reflects God. Were the eye of discernment to be opened, it would recognize that in this very state, they have considered themselves utterly effaced and non-existent in the face of him who is the all-pervading, the incorruptible. Methinks they have regarded themselves as utter nothingness and deemed their mention in that court an act of blasphemy. They are so completely wedded to God that they have lost themselves in God. And for their name to be brought forth in God's court, they consider to be a form of blasphemy. This is where they are in their spiritual station. For the slightest whispering of self within such a court is an evidence of self-assertion and independent existence. It's impossible for us to imagine not having our own distinction as ourselves. And they're saying that the closer you get to God, the slightest whispering of self is an evidence of self-assertion and independent existence. For in the eyes of them that have attained into that court, such a suggestion is itself a grievous transgression. How much more grievous would it be were aught else to be mentioned in that presence, were man's heart, his tongue, his mind, or his soul to be busied with anyone but the well-beloved? This, obviously, friends, is something that we can't possibly attain as mere mortals. They have claimed for themselves the voice of divinity, while by virtue of their station of messengership they have declared themselves the messengers of God. In every instance, they have voiced an utterance that would conform to the requirements of the occasion. Thus, whatsoever be their utterance, whether it pertain to the realm of divinity, lordship, prophethood, messengership, guardianship, apostleship, or servitude, all is true beyond the shadow of a doubt. Now we're out of gleanings again. Those words uttered by the luminaries of truth must needs be pondered. And should their significance be not grasped, enlightenment should be sought from the trustees of the depositories of knowledge, that these may expound their meaning and unravel their mystery. For it behooveth no man to interpret the holy words according to his own imperfect understanding, nor having found them to be contrary to his inclination and desires, to reject and repudiate their truth. Now, friends, this is a very, to me, very interesting little section here. So who are these? If we don't understand the teachings, the explicit teachings of a messenger of God, he says that we should seek to understand them, to be enlightened from the trustees of the depositories of knowledge, that these may expound their meaning and unravel their mystery. So the question is, who are the trustees of the teachings of a messenger of God, particularly after they're gone? Well, fortunately, in the Bahá'í Faith, we know who they are. Abdu'l-Bahá, and then the guardian. Now, we only had one guardian, not a line of guardians, but these were the designated trustees of the depositories of knowledge, that is, the holy writings and the teachings of the messenger. We know Muhammad left not only his book, but he left his family, Ali, and then the Imams, the lineal descendants. So Baha'u'lláh is saying that no one has the right to interpret the holy words according to his own imperfect understanding. This is anticipating Abdu'l-Bahā's will and testament, where and the Kitab-i-Iqan, Baha'u'llah's Book of his covenant, his will and testament, which first gives Abdu'l-Bahā the right to interpret, and then Abdu'l-Bahā gives the right to the guardian to interpret the holy words. And that for the rest of us, if we're not designated a trustee of the depositories of knowledge, we should turn to those who are, because we do not have the right to interpret the holy words ourselves. I hope that makes sense. And then he goes on to restate what he has said throughout this book. His condemnation of the clergy, of the divines of every age, especially the Muslim ones who accept Islam only because their fathers did, yet they don't even understand it, and therefore kept the Muslims away from the Bab and by implication himself. And then he does something very interesting. For 6 pages, he tears apart one particular Muslim clergyman, Haji Mirza Kareem Khan. Now, Kareem had been a follower of Sheikh Ahmad. So he was a sheikhi, a leader of that group. But he did not accept the Bab, and in fact was asked by the Shah, because he was considered a learned Islamic scholar, to write a book proving that the Bab was a false teacher. So Baha'u'lláh says in the IGAN that people kept asking him, because Haji Mirza Kareem Khan was what we would today call a best-selling author. He was putting all kinds of theological works out there, and they were being widely circulated. And he was creating a bit of a stir and a following. So people kept asking Baha'u'lláh about him. And he said, well, he couldn't comment because he hadn't read any of the books. But then one of Kareem's books fell into Baha'u'llah's possession. And Baha'u'lláh said that before he could comment on it, he felt that he needed to at least look at it. So he says he glanced at it a couple of times. He had it in his possession. And he said he could tell just from the title of the book, which was Guidance unto the Ignorant, that just from that there was too much ego in this book and arrogance. And so he says, from this title, we perceive the odor of conceit and vainglory, in so much as he hath imagined himself a learned man and regarded the rest of the people ignorant. So he said that alone told him all he needed to know about Kareem. But then he just blasts Kareem. He talks about how Kareem puffs himself up by saying you can't understand Muhammad's night journey unless you know 20 different specialized areas, including alchemy and several other things that were like magic and so forth. And Baha'u'lláh says, alchemy, this man is puffing himself up by saying he knows these 20 different specialties, including alchemy. Nobody can prove alchemy. This is all junk stuff. And he just really lits into Kareem. He also notes that Kareem means noble or honorable, and how there is a passage in the Quran that seems to speak to this man, Kareem, and about how he is very misguided and destined for hell. And he said, see how clearly the scriptures anticipate everything. And you can sort of guess that he must have had a smile on his face as he said this. But I thought, who else in all of Baha'i scripture, other than perhaps some of the really arch covenant breakers, warranted 6 pages from Baha'u'lláh being put down? And what must that mean about this man's spiritual destiny unless he truly repented? But he uses him as an example of an arrogant clergyman who is leading people astray and particularly attacking the Bab. So this leads him into his biggest discussion in this section that we're going to talk about tonight, about how we go about seeking enlightenment. And that someone like Kareem was not doing it the right way, because clearly, according to Baha'u'lláh, Kareem didn't get it. He didn't have any spiritual insights worthy of paying attention to. So he says, inasmuch as it hath been clearly shown that only those who are initiated into the divine mysteries can comprehend the melodies uttered by the bird of heaven, that's the manifestation, it is therefore incumbent upon everyone to seek enlightenment from the illumined in heart and from the treasuries of divine mysteries regarding the intricacies of God's faith and the abstruse allusions in the utterances of the day springs of holiness. Don't go to these people like Kareem who haven't got a clue about spiritual enlightenment. Seek it from someone who has an illumined heart and is a treasury of divine mysteries. Thus will these mysteries be unraveled, not by the aid of acquired learning. So don't look at how many PhDs they have. if they're a mujtahid, but solely through the assistance of God and the outpourings of his grace. Ask ye therefore of them that have the custody of the scriptures, if ye know not. So go to the imams, go to Abdul Baha, go to the guardian. So this time he returns to the theme that he set forth at the very beginning of the first section, regarding what the true seeker has to do to stay on the straight path of spiritual enlightenment. But this time he's going to go through it in greater detail, and this is that really wonderful section that we're quite familiar with from Gleanings. But, O my brother, when a true seeker determineth to take the step of search in the path leading to the knowledge of the Ancient of Days, he must, before all else, cleanse and purify his heart, which is the seat of the revelation of the inner mysteries of God, from the obscuring dust of all acquired knowledge and the illusions of the embodiments of satanic fancy. How do we cleanse our heart? He must purge his breast, which is the sanctuary of the abiding love of the beloved, of every defilement, and sanctify his soul from all that pertaineth to water and clay, from all shadowy and ephemeral attachments. And this is the hard part. He must so cleanse his heart that no remnant of either love or hate may linger therein, lest that love blindly incline him to error or that hate repel him away from the truth. The love is often the harder one. You know, that person that we love very much, who would rather us do something than be an active Baha'i, who would like us to come back to their religion, or something that we love very much that takes us away from our spiritual life. This is something we all have to ponder deeply. Even as thou dost witness in this day how most of the people, because of such love and hate, are bereft of the immortal face, have strayed far from the embodiments of the divine mysteries, and shepherdless are roaming through the wilderness of oblivion and error. That seeker must at all times put his trust in God, must renounce the peoples of the earth, detach himself from the world of dust, and cleave unto him who is the Lord of Lords. He must never seek to exalt himself above anyone, must wash away from the tablet of his heart every trace of pride and vainglory, must cling unto patience and resignation, observe silence, and refrain from idle talk. For the tongue is a smoldering fire, and excess of speech a deadly poison. Material fire consumeth the body, whereas the fire of the tongue devoureth both heart and soul. The force of the former lasteth but a time, whilst the effects of the latter endure a century. I'm sure you're quite familiar with that quote. And here I have taken the next paragraph and put it into bullet points. This is what we talked about the week that some of you were in the conference. And I highly recommend that you take this couple of paragraphs and if you're looking for a good deepening topic, they certainly would fit the bill. That seeker should also regard backbiting as a grievous error and keep himself aloof from its dominion, inasmuch as backbiting quencheth the light of the heart and extinguisheth the life of the soul. He should be content with little and be freed from all inordinate desire. He should treasure the companionship of those that have renounced the world and regard avoidance of boastful and worldly people a precious benefit. That's a really tough one. At the dawn of every day, he should commune with God and with all his soul persevere in the quest of his beloved. He should not hesitate to offer up his life for his beloved, nor allow the censor of the people to turn him away from the truth. As I said a few weeks ago, would we offer our life for Baha'u'lláh? Would we offer up our Saturday night for Baha'u'lláh? Go to that boring assembly meeting or feast rather than do something a little bit more exciting? He should consume every wayward thought with the flame of his loving mention and with the swiftness of lightning pass by all else save him. He should succor the dispossessed and never withhold his favor from the destitute. He should show kindness to animals, how much more unto his fellow man, to him who is endowed with the power of utterance. I mentioned that there's a book I just finished reading by Dr. Thomas Wolfe about how it is the power of utterance that separates the animal kingdom from the human kingdom. He should not wish for others that which he doth not wish for himself, nor promise that which he doth not fulfill. So the first clause is the golden rule, as we put it, but we go one step further, and it's not just doing unto others, it's wishing for others. But then you notice Baha'u'lláh adds the second clause, nor promise that which he doth not fulfill. With all his heart should the seeker avoid fellowship with evildoers and pray for the remission of their sins. He should forgive the sinful and never despise his low estate, for none knoweth what his own end shall be. How often hath a sinner at the hour of death attained to the essence of faith, and quaffing the immortal draught, hath taken his flight unto the celestial concourse. And this is the scary part. And how often hath a devout believer at the hour of his soul's ascension been so changed as to fall into the nethermost fire. Friends, I'm old enough to have known a number of Hands of the Cause. The Hands of the Cause were famous for asking the friends to pray for them, that they would stay devout to the very end, because they were very aware that they could slip and fall. The fact that they had the title Hand of the Cause of God did not mean anything in the total scheme of things to them personally. And they were always afraid of their own spiritual state and asked the friends to pray for them. Our purpose in revealing these convincing and weighty utterances is to impress upon the seeker that he should regard all else beside God as transient, and account all things save him who is the object of all adoration as utter nothingness. So paragraphs 213, 214 in the IGAN or Gleanings 125, section 125. This is really wonderful deepening material. Just those couple of paragraphs, you can spend more than an hour. In fact, we spent, the group of us that were together that one night, the 6 of us spent the whole hour on one paragraph. So I highly recommend that. He says, these are among the attributes of the exalted and constitute the hallmark of the spiritually minded. When the detached wayfarer and sincere seeker hath fulfilled these essential conditions, so you've got to be as perfect as what he's already talked about, then and only then can he be called a true seeker. Not someone who's found it, but someone who's on the right spiritual path. Whensoever he hath fulfilled the conditions implied in the verse, Whoso maketh efforts for us, he shall enjoy the blessings conferred by the words, in our ways shall we assuredly guide him. So he's promising us here at the end, in these words from the Quran, that if we make an effort, God will guide us. Only when the lamp of search, of earnest striving, of longing desire, of passionate devotion, of fervid love, of rapture and ecstasy is kindled within the seeker's heart, and the breeze of his loving kindness is wafted upon his soul, will the darkness of error be dispelled, the mist of doubts and misgivings be dissipated, and the lights of knowledge and certitude envelop his being. At that hour will the mystic herald bearing the joyful tidings of the Spirit shine forth from the city of God, resplendent as the morn, and through the trumpet blast of knowledge will awaken the heart, the soul, and the spirit from the slumber of negligence. So he's now giving us the promise that if you undertake this spiritual search, if you try to look within yourself and seek to improve your spiritual being, then you will be given the joyful tidings of the Spirit. It's going to make you happy. You will understand the city of God, which is the revelation of God. And through the trumpet blast of knowledge, your heart and soul will awaken from the slumber of negligence. He's giving us glad tidings. Then will the manifold favors and outpouring grace of the Holy and Everlasting Spirit confer such new life upon the seeker that he will find himself endowed with a new eye, a new ear, a new heart, and a new mind. You're going to see the world differently. He will contemplate the manifest signs of the universe and will penetrate the hidden mysteries of the soul. You will get to know yourself better, not just the universe, the hidden mysteries of the soul. Gazing with the eye of God, he will perceive within every atom a door that leadeth him to the stations of absolute certitude. He will discover in all things the mysteries of divine revelation and the evidences of an everlasting manifestation. We can't even imagine what gifts he's promising us in this page. I swear by God, were he that treadeth the path of guidance and seeketh to scale the heights of righteousness, to attain unto this glorious and supreme station, he would inhale at a distance of 1,000 leagues the fragrance of God, and would perceive the resplendent morn of a divine guidance rising above the dayspring of all things. Each and everything, however small, would be to him a revelation leading him to his beloved, the object of his quest. We will have increased, heightened awareness of God everywhere. You know, this is one of the things that I often think about with the first believers in a dispensation. These are people who had the spiritual insight to see the very first hints of dawn. You know, when a dispensation reaches its noon, its high noon, everybody sees it. Everybody knows about Jesus. Everyone knows about Muhammad. Not everyone knows about Bahá'u'lláh yet. So we're still in the early days. And so those of us who are fortunate to have accepted Bahá'u'lláh have done it with this early light. But how much better if we really became a true seeker and we could see, we didn't have to have as much light as we currently have to be able to see Bahá'u'lláh and God and everything. So great shall be the discernment of this seeker that he will discriminate between truth and falsehood, even as he doth distinguish the sun from the shadow. He will clearly distinguish all the signs of God from the doings, words, and ways of men. He'll be able to, just like a jeweler who can tell the difference between a gem and a rock, a normal stone, or the man who can distinguish spring from autumn, heat from cold. You're going to have a heightened sense of what's true and what's false. And we will be led by the perfume of God into the city of certitude. It won't be just faith. We will know with absolute certainty what is right and wrong and what comes from God and what doesn't. Once he reaches the city of certitude, he will discern the wonders of his ancient wisdom and will perceive all the hidden teachings from the rustling leaves of the tree which flourisheth in that city. With both his inner and outer ear, he will hear from its dust the hymns of glory and praise ascending unto the Lord of Lords. And with his inner eye will he discover the mysteries of return and revival. How unspeakably glorious are the signs, the tokens, the revelations and splendors, which he who is the King of names and attributes hath destined for that city. And then he talks about the wonders of this city of God. They that valiantly labor in quest of God will, when once they have renounced all else but him, be so attached and wedded to that city that a moment's separation from it would to them be unthinkable. They will hearken unto infallible proofs from the hyacinths of that assembly, and receive the surest testimonies from the beauty of its rose and the melody of its nightingale. Once in about 1,000 years shall this city be renewed and readorned. In other words, the next dispensation. That city is none other than the Word of God revealed in every age and dispensation. In the days of Moses, it was the Pentateuch. In the days of Jesus, the Gospel. In the days of Muhammad, the Quran. In this day, the Bayan. And in the dispensation of him whom God will make manifest, his own book, the book unto which all the books of former dispensations must needs be referred, the book which standeth amongst them all, transcendent and supreme. Friends, remember, this book is written at least 2 years before Baha'u'llah's declaration. And he's already referring to his collective works as transcendent and supreme amongst all these holy writings. In these cities, spiritual sustenance is bountifully provided, and incorruptible delights have been ordained. The food they bestow is the bread of heaven, and the spirit they impart is God's imperishable blessing. Upon detached souls they bestow the gift of unity, enrich the destitute, and offer the cup of knowledge unto them who wander in the wilderness of ignorance. All the guidance, the blessings, the learning, the understanding, the faith and certitude conferred upon all that is in heaven on earth are hidden and, sorry, I need to move something here, hidden and treasured within these cities. So, dear friends, we have come to the end of tonight's session in terms of going through the book. I see that we have